Lovely. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Sharewise webinar. We're very lucky to be joined by Managing Director, Dr. Stephen Bartrop of Tartana Minerals up in far north Queensland. I'm very interested to hear, obviously, we're talking about copper has been in the news a bit and a bit going on at the moment. Stephen, from your perspective as well, what's more or less your history with copper and with the company altogether?
Look, I've been associated with copper for many years, I guess, looking early as a geologist for Mount Isa Mines back in the 1980s and 1990s, before joining some investment banking. So I've followed copper quite a lengthy period of time, and certainly in recent times we've been more focused on gaining exploration and advanced projects like, for example, Tartana's copper project, to put ourselves in a position where we can, move forward with exposure to copper, basically.
Absolutely. Especially being Australian based, I think there's nothing better that we can be looking at the moment. So just for those viewers that haven't been to one of our webinars before, we do have a segment where you can ask questions at the very end, and we'll go through that. We generally leave about 5-10 minutes. But Stephen, if you want to get away with the presentation, I think we have some eager investors ready to hear.
Great. Look, thanks, Lachlan. That's great. And welcome, everybody. Look, I think we've got an exciting story to tell. So let me get on with it, and I'll focus on the key items. As you can see, we're basically a producer. We're moving forward in terms of actually, I can't page up. Okay, no. Okay, Lachlan, how do I go? Okay, all right. The usual disclaimer, and basically some pictures of our mine site and our plant and processing facility, and getting down to the nitty-gritty of it. Look, essentially, we purchased the Tartana mine site, which included a heap leach solvent extraction crystallisation plant back in 2017. We've moved forward, we've listed the company, and basically we've brought this plant, which was in care and maintenance since 2014, into production. And that's very, very important. It's generating a cash flow. It produces copper sulfate pentahydrate, which many people won't really know what it is, but basically it's copper sulfate that's sold into the industrial markets, including the mining industry in North Queensland. And also we're looking at potentially entering the agricultural industry. Importantly, it's priced on the LME copper price. So copper sulfate consists of 25% copper, and so we get paid the full amount of the LME copper price for that product. So it's a very good exposure. And I guess, on the right-hand side there, you can see that our operating costs at the moment, because we're extracting copper from ponds and existing heaps, is very low compared to the actual copper price itself. If I go forward, Titanic Hopper, this sort of summarises, and essentially we've got a large porphyry deposit which has been partially mined at the surface and extends into a primary zone below. So that 45,000 tonnes of copper we've drilled out below a pit. It's all on granted mining leases and so forth, and we're looking at opportunities of exploiting that copper going forward. However, if we step back to the copper sulfate, you'll see we have probably around 15,000 tonnes of copper in transitional and oxide resources, and these are targeted for our future production going forward for the copper sulfate production. So we will look at extracting this, placing it on the existing heap leach, and also potentially building a new heap leach pad to continue that through. So if you look at the copper content there, 15,000 tonnes, how long does that last? Well, look, ideally the plant produces around 6,000 tonnes of copper sulfate each year. So if with a 50% recovery, there's potentially 5 years. I think we'll get more than 50% over that period of time. So it's probably a 5 to 10 year mine life at potentially current production rates. But of course, the exciting stuff is what's at depth and how do we extract and process that material below. If So moving forward, the copper price, and we talked earlier, Lachlan, about it. I think most people are quite bullish about the copper price. Obviously, we're going to see vagaries with the comings and goings of the China economy. But I think overall, there's no doubt that supply is dwindling. Mining costs are becoming higher, grades are decreasing, and you've seen this incredible M&A activity or merger activity with the majors all looking to secure copper exposure. So on the other side, of course, copper concentrates are in high demand given the increase in smelting capacity in China, and of course it's the copper demand over to 2050. Wood Mackenzie, I think, are expecting a 75% increase in copper demand during the next 20 years, and that's driven by both transport, electric cars. We've all seen how they've infiltrated the market, and certainly more so overseas, and of course renewables. So there's a lot of copper involved in renewable installations and so forth. Yeah. So the outlook is great going forward. So I think it's good. Look, moving on to our projects, I suppose we have other projects. We've got quite a substantial portfolio up in the Chillagoe region in far north Queensland. We have the Mountainmade Gold project where we've established a resource, and we've got some open areas to the south of that resource which have significantly high grades that we need to follow up. So we're quite keen to conduct that exploration, and of course there's a whole lot of critical metal byproduct credits that come with that mineralisation. So we're in the process of putting a mining lease. Well, we've applied for a mining lease, and we're close to having that granted, with some final steps just being addressed at the moment. Copper targets, we've got a lot of copper targets, and we've got we've been an early mover in establishing a good ground position in the Chillagoe area, one of the major copper areas in Australia. And you can see these projects range from early greenfield stuff through to quite advanced prospects where there's potentially economic mineralisation at surface that has never been followed up at depth.
Yeah.
On our mining lease, we also have the Queen Grade Zinc project, and you can see here that we've got a resource of 39,000 tonnes sitting in an open pit structure and the nearby King Bowl mine is less than a kilometre away. So there's a real opportunity of advancing that in the future, and there's no question, like the Tartana open pit, that it will continue at depth to quite some, potentially hundreds of metres. I don't know, Lachlan, whether you saw this morning, but then we announced an upgraded exploration target for the Nightfa silver project. This is in light of the antimony price, and I think many of your viewers will know that the antimony price has shot up with the potential Chinese restrictions on export, given that China is the dominant antimony supplier in the world. So those export restrictions have sent the antimony price up to around 25,000 US a tonne. Whereas, not long ago, it was around 6,000 to 8,000, 10,000 a tonne. So we've looked at our Nightflower exploration target, which, we have a lot of drilling. There's 22 holes that are supporting this exploration target. And that target's now increased to, 2.75 million tonnes at 270 silver equivalent grams per tonne silver equivalent, for about 30 million ounces, silver equivalents to 5.36 million tonnes at a much higher grade for around 45 million ounces. So it's a substantial increase, and I think the antimony, we've had intersections through that project that have been, up to 9% antimony, which are phenomenal grades, and essentially it's massive sulfide with a lot of lead and silver and other elements or other metals there. So we're coming back to readdress this, because this is a very high grade deposit that requires more work, clearly. If you look at our corporate overview, we're relatively cheap. And I must admit to all investors, we have not done the promotion because over the last 2 years, we've been very much focused on getting the copper sulfate plant up and running. And it's been a complex plant, but we've achieved that outcome. We've probably been a year longer than we expected. And there's technical aspects to why that's occurred. But I think if you look at the enterprise value of the market cap of around 5.3, we're very cheap given the portfolio we've got and the fact that we're producing quite a strong cash flow that we can see in potentially in perpetuity. So I think that underpins our ability to generate cash and to finance the company going forward in terms of our many exploration projects. So moving forward. Okay, there's some details. Just to flick through some of the other projects and to give a bit of flavour, I suppose, Lachlan, in terms of what the copper sulfate operations look like. You can see a flow sheet on the left-hand side. You can see essentially it's a solvent extraction, and then we're crystallising our copper sulfate. So it's almost like the year 10, year 12 chemistry set where you're crystallising copper sulfate. However, there's more to it. There's some IP associated here, which allows us to produce a free-flowing crystal, which is very desirable, and the ore body itself has a low level of impurities. So it creates a very pure copper sulfate that pentahydrate that's free-flowing and is certainly in demand and sought after. So it's quite an exciting plant. It's that additional year of bringing it back into production is perhaps a reflection of the complexity, but the final outcome is fantastic. It's a really good product, and our focus on producing, having longevity and being self-funding is well on track.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, Queen grade, we talked earlier about it. I can just to outline, look, this is a serious ore body, or it's a significant ore body that in any other junior would justify probably the market capitalisation we're experiencing at the moment. There's high-grade zinc zones here. This will continue at depth. We have to go back and continue drilling at depth to upgrade this resource, but also extend it. So we've got no doubt that we will be able to extend it given the parallels with King Vol zinc mine, which, as I mentioned, is only 800 metres away. So there's work here. It's on a granted mining lease, and there's an opportunity for open pit mining for this project. Made Gold we talked about earlier. There's a potential heap leach project there for surface gold with minimal strip ratio and quite good recoveries. A lot of that test work's been done in the past, but also I think we're really quite excited about the opportunities with the deeper mineralisation, and particularly to the south. So we're coming back and reviewing this in terms of how this might look from a different geological perspective, perhaps more like a Kidston type mineralisation, and perhaps accurate rather than following a north-south trend. So I think we'll see some exciting exploration results coming out of Mountain Maid, particularly perhaps boosting some of the grade opportunities there. Cardross, look, some great intercepts from surface. We're revisiting the model on how the mineralisation may occur, and you can see in the little square there's magnetic highs, and a lot of the copper mineralisation seems to be associated with those magnetic highs. So we think there's some cross-faulting that's and dikes which are delivering that mineralisation, and then it's going along preferential beds. So we'll change our exploration approach from past explorers as to expand the south. Bellevue, I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of copper prospects. You can see on the right-hand side that there are many prospects with quite encouraging grades to surface that have never been followed up. And also the OK mine has a resource base. It's non-JORC at this point in time, but we'll probably look at upgrading to a JORC 2012 standard in the medium term, in the short term actually, to then be able to publish that so people can appreciate that there is actually a good copper sulfate project there that has existing resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Beefwood, one of our high risk projects, is quite exciting. It's in an area that's undercover. There's sulfide at surface. In float samples, there's actually basement at surface, which hasn't been recognised in the past. And there's been samples up to 282 grams per tonne silver at surface. So, and then I think if you look on the right-hand side, you can see a whole bunch of structures. It's that lends itself to, it's a big potential porphyry target that basically needs to be drilled. There's no drilling probably within kilometres and kilometres of this target area, and this is the preferred area. So it follows on from Balimba, which we let the agreement lapse, given that the priority targets really exist in the Beefwood project. And then Nightflower we just talked about in terms of the upgrade of that resource. That's very exciting given those antimony grades. And of course, I'll just highlight here with the digger load, that exploration target is only a reflection of the digger load. It excludes the whole Terrace Prospect, which requires further exploration. Timbula, some an exciting copper play, but we have to get out and do some more work. We're setting copper mineralisation at surface, and there's a lot of drilling, historical drilling, that sort of, there's indicating a lot of smoke basically. So it's really pinning down what the actual the target is, and then to drill test it. So I think that's about it, Lachlan, in terms of
that's fantastic.
So we've covered a bit.
Absolutely, no, definitely has. There's been questions coming through already. I think mostly on the production side of the copper sulfate, especially. You did mention that there's a bit of revenue coming through. When can we expect to be seeing that come through? More or less, if it is public knowledge at the moment, what sort of revenue are we generating, and as a result, why do you think the market cap is so low then?
Look, I think the market cap's low because there has been a lack of promotion, and I'll be the first to put up our hand because we've been focused on getting the plant back into production. If one of our most recent announcements, we sold 120 bags, 150 tonnes to MacArthur River. It generated more than 500,000 in revenue for the company. Going forward, we've got an 100% offtake with Canaans, and a typical load is around 54 bags, or about 67 tonnes of copper sulfate, and we expect to do so. A bag at the current copper price, 54 bags, is worth around 250,000. And our view is that we would like to at least get 2, potentially 3 shipments per month. So I suppose your investors can sit there and calculate it out as to how that looks. But I think it places the company in a very, very strong position going forward in terms of meeting existing creditors. We've got some debt with some convertible notes in terms of meeting those, and also providing a cash flow for our exploration activities. So I think, the purpose now, my purpose is really to get out there and show people that we are demonstrating a very good cash flow.
Yeah. And with that cash flow, obviously, that's going to go towards a few other projects, or is that going to be developing further with the production?
Look, I think from the copper sulfate perspective, we'll put in a new leach pad potentially sometime next year to continue that production. But really, most of the cash flow is going to be directed towards exploration and other opportunities. So I think clearly there's a huge opportunity with our primary copper mineralisation in the base of the Tartana pit. So the pit's been mined down to about 12 metres, so it's not particularly deep. And then below that, we move into this copper mineralisation that we know through previous drilling extends to at least 480 metres. So there's an opportunity around that, drilling out that, increasing the resource base. And then we look at things like Nightflower and so forth. We can start a drilling program and start to really expand some of these projects or test these projects that we have in our portfolio that, you know, we've potentially ignored for the last 6 months.
Okay, so what's the more or less timeline or milestones that you want to be achieving over the next 12 months?
Look, I think the priority is clearly production and cash flow. So importantly out of that is to ensure that, and we talked about the transitional oxide ore, is to ensure that we've got longevity with our copper sulfate pentahydrate production and sales. There's no, as I mentioned, there's no problems on the demand for the material, and it's high quality. So it's up to us as a company to ensure that we can deliver and maintain those 2, potentially 3 shipments per month. And we'll have to deal with the wet season, of course. So there might be delays in getting some of those shipments out, but we'll deal with that. And then after that, I think it's really around, let's get some decent resources with, 45,000 tonnes is attractive. But look, we've got a drilling program designed to increase that to more than 100,000 tonnes of contained copper. And we know we can do that. So we'd like to implement part of that. And then we'd like to implement some of the higher priority projects that like Nightflower in terms of, given the high value of the ore that's there.
Absolutely, it's very exciting indeed. But we've got a question coming through, and ladies and gentlemen, please keep sending them through. We do have a few more to answer. A question coming through just with regards to the board and leadership. Do you have any further comments on the board and more or less their history and expertise?
Sure. Yeah. No. Look, that's fine. I think, look, my background, I suppose people know that I've been a geologist for many years, but I've worked in a number of investment banks like Macquarie and JP Morgan and Bankers Trust and so forth. And then we've run our own investment banking side and developed these companies and identified these assets. Bruce Hills is a very experienced auditor, basically financial controller who's come out of Westpac. Our chairman, Jihad, is a self-made businessman, and he's been very successful over the years. Michael Thurnbeck is a very experienced geologist who's worked a lot up through Asia and down, and obviously through North Queensland. And we have a new director, Chiara, who comes from a legal background and is associated with a big investor out of China. So I think we've got a nice board balance at the moment. And I think, look at, investors may have been disappointed at the share price in terms of the lack of promotion, which we fully are accountable for. But I guess, the priority has been, particularly from the major shareholders, is to bring this copper sulfate project into production and to produce a steady cash flow.
Absolutely. And we've just got a question coming through. Basically, what are the 3 biggest challenges so far that you've faced, and how have you overcome them so far?
The 3 biggest challenges. Look, we've had 2 particularly bad wet seasons. So the last wet season started with Cyclone Jasper, you recall, in mid-December, and then the previous wet season was similar, and both wet seasons went for essentially January, February, and well into March, and that holds up access to the site. And so we've got to ensure going forward that we have adequate supplies of our reagents, in particular acid and diesel, to ensure that the plant can continue. We can always fly people in and out. So we'll be better prepared around the wet season production going forward. So I think along those lines, I think the plant itself has been incredibly challenging because it was built over a period of 5 years, and there's been a lot of investigative process that was involved with the vendor in the past, and so ultimately he produces a very good quality product, but it's not an off-the-shelf plant. So there's been a lot of learning, a lot of expertise gained associated with that project.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, more or less, just to finish off, then, Stephen, for yourself, with investors at the moment, either new or existing, what would be your final comments to make to them today?
Look, I hope everyone looks at the company in terms of where the market cap is, the fact that we're producing a cash flow, and the fact that we've got incredibly exciting projects that we're now in a position to take forward. And a highlight is really, the announcement today on the antimony within Nightflower. That project itself would have sent another junior share price well into the stratosphere. And I guess with us, we've just got to get that message out there. We have the assets, we've just got to promote it well.
Absolutely. Well, we're happy to have you on board for another webinar if you're open to the idea. So I think that's definitely something we'll have to chat after this. But for anyone that wants to get in touch, please send through an email straight to Stephen. The presentation is, I believe, on the ASX as well, so you can have a look through there. But apart from that, if you didn't see the start of the presentation, we do have a recording, so you'll be able to watch that on YouTube. But Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure from our side with regards to everything. If we do have any further questions, we'll definitely pass them through to you so you can answer those for people. But thank you very much for your time, and I think we'll see you next time.
Yeah, great, Lachlan. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.